The first concept to understand for basic music theory for the guitar is the root note. So all the root note means is, if you think of a chord, let's imagine the nut is right here, because in this picture I used like a fretboard that could be anywhere. This is actually one of my guitars, but let's say the nut is right there. So here would be the open position, 1, 2, 3. So the concept of the root note, and sometimes people call it the 1, or the root note. When you call it the 1, most people will write a 1 with a circle around it. I think probably the best way to understand it is let's take a G chord, because most people learn this. So if I were to write the notes out, G, B, D, and you don't have to know these notes. It's a good thing to learn them, but right now it doesn't matter. So the root note here of a G chord, so I'm talking about a G chord, and I like to write chords in square brackets to represent a chord. The root note is G. So this, right now I wrote it thinking in terms of notes, but musicians like to abstract the way they think and to think in terms of scale tones. So basically what happens is we would replace all these G's with 1. And that is the root note of a G chord. So the root note of a G chord is 1. And then to take it a step further, the other notes also get numbers. And all these numbers are referencing the major scale. I'm not going to talk more about that now, but that's where these numbers are coming from. So the root note was all those G's. And then the third, or the 3, is B. So I'm going to draw over those B's with 3. There's another one up there. I'm getting rid of the B's. So far we had G, B, D. Those are the 3 notes in the G major chord. And we have the 1 and the 3. So that only leaves one more note. And this one is called the 5. Let me get a different color. And this D is the 5. A lot of people like to play their G chord with a D right there. So that would also be a possible 5. So the important concept right here that I'm trying to get across, and I'll just finish that with the 5, is what the root note is. So the root note of a G major chord is G. So that's the first most important lesson for understanding any music theory, is the concept of the root note. So if you had a C major chord, the root note would be C. An A major chord, it would be A. F sharp minor chord, it would be F sharp. So the root note is easy to figure out because it's just the first. It's just if the chord has a name like F sharp minor or F sharp major 7, flat 5, or B flat 13, it's just the letter. You just get rid of everything and the letter is going to give you the root note, or what's called the 1. And this is definitely, the 1 is the most important concept to understand everything else. And the 1 is the first note of the major scale, and it's your reference point. So a lot of times I tell my students, there's some Rasta colors, I tell my students to imagine like when you learn to type, if you know how to type on a keyboard, the first thing you have to learn is to keep your fingers on the home row keys. And to do music theory, the analogy would be you have to know where your root note is. You really can't do music theory without knowing where the 1 is at all times. And as you get better at it, a lot of times you actually don't play the 1, but you have to know what the 1 is. So that's the first concept for basic music theory.